Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Voices for Voices TV show and podcast. I'm your host, founder, and executive director of Voices for Voices, Justin Allen Hayes. Thank you so much for joining us, whether this is your first time viewing or listening to our TV show and podcast, or if you've been with us from the beginning. Thank you for being a part of Voices for Voices, both here in the United States and across the world, or 50 countries. And I say it all the time, but it's really humbling to know that the little old me and our organization, that we're reaching such a wide group of individuals across the world. As we are in the United States, in the state of Ohio, Northeast Ohio, Hudson, Ohio, if this is your first time joining us, we talk about topics around mental health, trauma, experiences, and we cover a lot of topics that may not be covered elsewhere, and we feel that having given people a voice, whether they haven't had one before, or whether they're stepping out and want to talk about their experiences, and all of this is to help inspire you, friends, family, colleagues, any human being that can benefit. And so we thank you for joining us on this particular episode, over 240 episodes at this time. And probably by the time this one airs, we have a couple of remote out-of-studio episodes that we'll be having. So we may be really close to 250 by the time that this airs. And we're on our way to 300 for a total episode count of our catalog by the end of 2025. And that's a combination of in-studio episodes and remote out-of-studio episodes. We find that it works really good to touch on current events a little easier sometimes when we're remote, due to obviously scheduling, and we record ahead, as you probably have gathered, and so that's how we try to, in my mind and our mind, try to bring all that together in a little bit of a package with hopefully a nice bow on that. For our episode today, first just want to ask, how do you handle stress, anxiety? Is that a problem, an issue? Have you ever been stressed? Have you ever been in a situation and had maybe a panic attack? Getting the sweats, feeling that maybe feeling like you might be passing out, and those types of symptoms, or are you able to work through all situations? I would gather that we all get stressed at just different points and different experiences in our lives, some more than others. And as far as when that stress occurs, that happens maybe sometimes similar to others, and maybe sometimes a little bit different how we react. And the reason I'm bringing this up is when many years ago, when I was in corporate America, I first started to notice panic attacks and ultra high levels of stress, and it was different, and it is different than any feeling, and I think everybody that goes through some type of stress or anxiety at whether it's a short period of time or whether it's a long period of time, that we go through things, we go through situations differently. And so in corporate America, or say just about any type of job where you're gathering maybe in a conference room and having a meeting, discussions, whether you or I have speaking parts or whether we're just listening to the meeting, as we're learning and progressing, and so that's when I started to realize in meetings when doors were closed, not that they were locked, but just the doors were closed in a meeting. A lot of times you're talking about sometimes projects that not a lot of people in the organization know that are going on. So want to try to keep that group together as best as I can. As well as, right, there's noise, there's sound that could come into the meeting as well. That could be a distraction, and so I started to notice myself more and more in these, I say, stress environments that I didn't know why I was stressed. I didn't know. Yeah, I guess the easy way to say it, I don't know why I was stressed the way I was. I didn't know why. There were several times where I had to actually step out of meetings because I was just so panicked, and they said the sweats were coming. I was feeling lightheaded, and it just not a good feeling. And I'm trying to trace it in my mind back, this anxiety from the work standpoint. Obviously, as a child growing up, you're in different situations. Having played sports, being a pitcher, there's everybody's watching me pitch, and just having that confidence. There was a period of time when that confidence kind of left, and I think that around high school, maybe a little bit sooner, started to feel anxiety and stress. I just didn't know that it was happening. And so getting back into that corporate America story, as you go through, and as I've gone through education and different trainings, we learned all about subjects and subject matters. For me, it was marketing and management and presentations and the like. And so getting used to that is one thing, of giving a presentation or talking in front of a class and an instructor, 20 or 30 people, thinking that they're judging every single thing we're saying, and maybe some are, but a majority of people aren't. They're in their own mind. They're doing their own thing. They're prepping for their presentation, and what wasn't covered, and I feel it's a real travesty to a lot of people, is how jobs and corporate America really works. So we have the subjects, right? So for me, marketing, and so I have had and still have an interest in marketing, topic-wise. But what's not taught in school, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, and I hope things are changing, because I think it's a big thing, and it's a big cause of stress that added to me, was from time to time companies go through restructurings, and they, for whatever reason, they have to terminate or fire individuals that come in one day and they're doing their job, and the next day they're being told that, oh, sorry, we don't need you anymore for whatever reason. There's the whole legal jargon that's given, to safeguard from hopefully any lawsuits that could come against the company. And so my first job out of school, I was doing marketing. I was doing well, And one day, we started to learn that, and this is when the big crash in the stock market and all that in the 2000s that occurred, and so our organization, like many, they were having orders canceled from customers, and so money was tight, and so I don't agree with the reason, but some organizations like the one I was at is they're a publicly traded company, and so that means they're listed on the NASDAQ or the Dow or the Russell 2000. They're a publicly traded company, and so the financials are important, not just to the the people at the organization, but then there's board of directors that help shape really the future and what projects are approved, what aren't, what's happening, and again in the stock market and interest rates and all these things, and a lot of them I don't understand very well. I just know that they play a part. So anyways, I came in one day and we were told, so it was an 8 to 5 job. We were told the day before, make sure that you're at work, you're by your phone at 8 a.m. And I, through the grapevine, was learning that something obviously was going to be happening to some employees. There were going to be some terminations. People who were working alongside me were not going to be, and I may be one of the ones that was let go. And so that's exactly what happened. At 8 a.m., everybody's by their phone, and you hear phone ring here and there, and then word starts to trickle through the organization that if you're being called right now, you're being called to a conference room with HR, human resources, and your boss, manager, and being read the paragraph of legalese that basically saying that your time here working at this organization is done, and so they walked out the door, and so that was going on. And so when I harken back to talking about school and education, and even if it's not a college or university, just a training or you're shadowing somebody, that topic really isn't discussed. I know for sure for me, with my education, never was really mention of how do you manage that? How do you manage going through a situation, a restructuring, where it may be a friend or a colleague or yourself that is out of a job and it has to look for a new job. Those things weren't covered, and I think it's a real shame that they weren't, because that ties right into the emotions and the anxiety that I talked about at the beginning of this episode, of being told, be by your phone at this time, and then as you're hearing people are, you can hear a phone ring here and there, and trying to figure out whose phone's ringing, and I remember that being a huge milestone, not in a good way. So I wasn't fired, relieved of my duties. There were others, so luckily I was kept on at that time. But I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of trauma, and trauma can come in many different forms. And so the trauma being, okay, here's this event, and it's a life-changing event, because if you're one of the individuals who is let go or fired, whatever term you want to use, then you have to go home to, your wife, your husband, your significant other, your family, your friends, and talk about it. And we all know how gossipy and that happens. Just in general, we're curious as human beings, and so that day really, I think, looking back, set a precedent for me in the workforce, and coming to work each day not knowing if it's going to be my last at that organization, if I'm going to have to start looking for a new job, and so these sweats and these panic attacks that I was feeling at conference rooms and just being at my desk, my cubicle, my office, depending on which organization I was at, really was just very, very hard, and is very traumatic. And even I think to this day, I've really talked about it a lot because the fear of being judged. And I know there's going to be some listeners and viewers, and they're going to judge, and that's okay. But for me, it feels good to be able to finally talk about this, which it's huge, and it's one of those things where if you haven't gone through it, then you feel a little bit differently. And so a significant other can say, well, what's the big deal? And you weren't one of the ones that was displaced and let go. Why are you getting all? Why are you so anxious? And why do you have this panic? And caused me to drink more alcohol. Not that I had any problem from when I was in college to going there. It was a pretty easy transition of abuse for me. So it caused me drinking more and just looking at things and going, wow, like what happens if that's me someday? And it's hard to think about going through that. And so I think in any education, any training program, how to manage restructurings, because they happen so often, whether you're at a small organization and it's one person, or it's 10, or it's thousands, or whatever the number is, just knowing that there are people, again, that they're going to have to, they go home and tell their family that here's what happened, and then the whole judging of like, well, did I do something wrong? And maybe I said something wrong, or maybe with this last project I didn't give the presentation in the best light or the best way. And so we start questioning ourselves just as human beings of, well, I obviously did something wrong, they don't like me, it's a popularity contest. And so I transition now to several years ago, but I was working at a corporate America organization, and I was found to be on that side of being let go for a restructuring. And I already had anxiety, panic attacks. I already had all that anyway. So I came into work on one day, and a meeting with my manager that just popped up randomly that day, not with any subject in it. Usually it's like, hey, we're going to discuss this topic or this area or this report or whatever that may be in your line of work. And so I had an idea, just given my analytical mind, and like, oh my gosh, because I was already in that mode of, oh my gosh, any day can be my last day at work at this organization. And so that ended up happening. So then I found myself having to go home to family and say, hey, I need to look for a new job. And it's like, well, why? What happened? What did you do? And as if I already didn't feel awful as it was. But again, we can only impact ourselves. We can't really impact how others are going to feel. And so that's why, when we talk about emotions on their shows, it's big because it might be thought of like, oh, it's the touchy-feely topic. But it's important if we're constantly being put in situations where we are uncomfortable, and whether we know why we're uncomfortable or our bodies just know, where it's like, oh my gosh, why am I getting so panicked? Why am I getting so anxious at this particular event? And then things start to domino effect, and one meeting, the panic attack leads to another, leads to a panic attack driving, and then for me, that's where things, mental health wise, were really coming to a head and spiraling and out of control. And so when I do look back at November of 2017, as I've discussed many times, and having that low point, mental health and really health, and really as a human being, it was both a very hard decision to make, to admit yourself into a psych ward, and like, oh my gosh, like I'm one of those people, and so I'm judging myself already as that goes. But it was one of the best decisions I made, because I was able to put my ego aside, which you've seen on a previous episode where we've talked to Jason Simpson, and where he talked about kind of the show business, the being an actor, you have to check your ego at the door. That industry, the egos, if you have an ego in that industry, with entertainment industry, it won't fly. And so I had to, in November 2017, really check my ego at the door, and the door was in the hospital. I was saying, okay, Justin, you don't know everything. You don't know what'll happen if you leave the hospital. They say you're not dying, or we can admit you. And it was one of the hardest decisions to make. But at that point, I felt at kind of my lowest of, I almost like I give up. And that's a hard thing for anybody, to feel that somebody would get to that point of just like, all right, I give up. Like everything I'm trying isn't working. Some of the feedback, again, coming from some individuals around me, wasn't the healthiest. So just power through it, and again, I don't know how I would react if I was on the flip side. So I had to fight through just a lot of things in my mind, my ego, and what others were going to think about, what my family, and I recently married, and I'm a failure, I'm a loser, think of whatever term or word that you want to think about. But that anxiety that started that first job, that first time that there was a restructuring, and seeing grown adults being escorted out by security, it really carried with me on top of the stress of being an outcast growing up and being a successful athlete, and then that got turned on its head, and it no longer was the case. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't have what I felt like an identity. And so that's when I turned to the partying and the mostly the alcohol abuse, and not being a great person in a relationship, of just being in things for all the wrong reasons. And so when I asked at the beginning of the episode, how do you react in stressful situations, or when your body kind of gets into that tense moments, for whatever that is, and whether we know why we're tense and why we're anxious, I always look back to, well, what other times did I feel anxious and when I was panicked? And so those times when I was working and individuals were fired, let go, restructured, and then to the point when I was one of the ones impacted and let go, it really takes a toll. And so I'm reaching out to the Department of Education, President Trump, Melania Trump, anybody who is associated with our administration to help put a curriculum together that will help address some of these the issues and problems that I discussed here today, because those things are real. So whether you're in an office or whether you're on a ball field or whether you're with a significant other, whether you're traveling on an airplane or a train for the first time, and whatever that may be, if we're taught at an earlier age, at least given a little bit of an idea of how things we can do, coping mechanisms, when we feel these ways, I think that would be a big help for the mental health of our fellow human beings. And so if you or somebody you know is going through a crisis, there is help available. You can speak with someone today. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is in English and Spanish, available 24 hours a day. You can call 988. You can text 988. You can chat on the 988lifeline.org website. No judgment zone. And again, so if you or somebody you know is going through a crisis, it would be great if you could share this information with them so that they know that they're not alone and you're not alone and I'm not alone. Nobody's alone. So until next time, I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, and I just ask that you please be a voice for you or somebody in need.